When we hide parts of our identity to survive, we don't actually eliminate the danger. We simply delay it. And the secrets we bury to protect our current lives often become an invisible weight that our children are eventually forced to carry. In the mid-20th century United States, thousands of light-skinned African Americans engaged in a practice known as passing. To navigate a brutal racial caste system, they severed ties with their families and communities to live entirely as white. It was a survival mechanism engineered to secure physical safety and economic opportunity in a society that actively denied them both. This dynamic illustrates a concept sociologists call the looking glass self. The theory proposes 3 steps. First, we imagine how we appear to others. Second, we imagine how they judge that appearance. And third, we experience an emotional reaction, like pride or profound shame. Our sense of self becomes entirely dependent on the reflections we see in the people around us. If your existence depends on performing a specific identity for an audience, the true self starves. You exist in a state of double consciousness, constantly monitoring your own performance, leaving a psychological vacuum where an authentic life should be. This photograph shows the starkly divided reality of the era. For a young woman named Sarah Jane, this physical segregation mirrored her internal life. She was caught between her mother's desperate warnings that denying her heritage was a sin and her own crushing need to feel safe and accepted in a society engineered to exclude her. In this manuscript, the chapter Sarah Jane's Restructuring details her attempt to reconstruct a new life by passing as a white woman. But handwritten notes reveal the immediate collapse of that strategy when a white man discovers her heritage and violently beats her. The rejection forces Sarah Jane into a state scholars call unhomeliness. It is the distinct, isolating experience of not feeling at home in any culture. Having rejected her Black community and having been violently expelled from the white one, she belongs nowhere. Her attempt to build a life on a foundation of hidden truth did not provide the safety she sought. Instead, it stripped away her community and left her exposed to a much deeper, more dangerous form of isolation. Looking at this wide shot of the 135th Street intersection, we see the vibrant environment Sarah Jane enters when she arrives in Harlem to rebuild. Here, she meets a man named Jim. While she no longer has to completely mask her race, she engages in a practice called covering, downplaying aspects of her identity and history to blend in and avoid further trauma. Jim carries his own heavy baggage, shaped by a phenomenon economists call occupational crowding. Despite holding a college degree, systemic racism and discriminatory hiring practices crowd Black men like him out of high-wage professions and force them into low-wage, subservient roles. That relentless economic and social marginalization breeds deep insecurity. Jim's lifetime of enduring racial put-downs begins to curdle into intense jealousy and suspicion at home. He channels his feelings of powerlessness into a desperate need to control Sarah Jane's movements and police her interactions. Even after abandoning her attempt to pass in the white world, Sarah Jane finds herself trapped again. Within her own community, her daily life and identity are still being managed and restricted, this time by the unhealed trauma of her partner. This section, labeled Susan's Visit, introduces the childhood friend Sarah Jane trusts. As she discovers she's pregnant, she leans on Susan. The manuscript reveals Jim's terror at becoming a father. He remembers his own father enduring slurs, a humiliation he is terrified of passing down. This dynamic mimics a pattern outlined in the Book of Exodus, where the consequences of a parent's actions echo down to the 3rd and 4th generations. The parents' unhealed wounds, their repressed fears, and their hidden shame are invisibly transmitted to their child. Raised in a home where identity is framed as a liability rather than a source of pride, the son absorbs that fear. Lacking a strong, authentic foundation from his parents, he searches for belonging and power exactly where he shouldn't, in the dangerous hierarchies of the criminal underworld. Sarah Jane and Jim believed they were shielding their son by burying their past traumas and performing a version of respectable life. But by denying him the truth of their pain, they left him completely unequipped to navigate the reality of his own. The family's carefully constructed illusions finally shatter in a setting just like this one. When the son is arrested and put on trial, the sterile, unyielding environment of the courtroom drags decades of suppressed family history directly into the public record. For Sarah Jane, the trial is a devastating exposure. Her lifelong performance, first as a white woman, then as a perfectly assimilated, respectable mother, is completely dismantled as her son's violent actions are detailed in front of a jury. Sitting at the defense table, the son realizes the depth of the void he was raised in. The silence his parents maintained, which they called protection, feels to him like total abandonment. They hid who they really were, so he never knew who he was supposed to be. A secret offers a very convincing simulation of safety, but it is an illusion with an expiration date, and it almost always runs out at the exact moment the truth can inflict the maximum amount of damage. The narrative reaches its breaking point after a gang-related shooting leaves the son critically wounded. The sterile courtroom is replaced by the quiet hum of a hospital room, with Sarah Jane sitting alone at his bedside. In this clinical, unforgiving space, the performance ends. Stripped of her defenses, Sarah Jane finally drops the mask she has worn for decades. She is forced to look at her son and herself without the filter of pretense or the shield of a false identity. There is a biblical principle in the Gospel of John that states, "The truth will set you free." That freedom does not mean the tragedy is undone or that the physical wounds instantly heal. It means the soul is finally released from the exhausting, corrupting labor of maintaining a lie. The cycle of generational trauma is incredibly resilient, but it is not unbreakable. It only ends when the person carrying the secret finally decides that the weight is too heavy to pass on and chooses to lay it down.